I want you to close your eyes and remember the smell of your childhood kitchen on a Sunday morning. Maybe your mother was making breakfast. Maybe there was the sound of the toaster popping up. The smell of warm, toasted bread slathered with butter is one of the most comforting, primal aromas in the human experience. It spells safety. It spells home. But for millions of us over the age of 60, that smell has become a source of fear. We have been told by our doctors, our nutritionists, and the news media that bread is the enemy. If you are pre-diabetic, or if you are managing type 2 diabetes, you look at a slice of white bread and you don't see comfort anymore, you see a sugar spike. You see inflammation. You see weight gain. You see a number on your glucose monitor that makes you worry about your vision, your kidneys, and your feet. So, you do the responsible thing. You cut it out. You deprive yourself. You sit at a restaurant and wave away the bread basket, feeling a little pang of sadness while everyone else enjoys it. But what if I told you that the bread itself isn't necessarily the enemy? What if I told you that the danger of bread lies not just in the ingredients, but in the temperature? There is a scientific loophole in the way your body processes starch, a loophole that was discovered relatively recently and is changing the way we look at carbohydrates. It turns out that you can change the molecular structure of bread, without adding a single chemical, simply by using your freezer and your toaster in a specific order. This is not an old wives' tale. This is biochemistry. By using what I call the freezer trick, you can lower the glycemic impact of that slice of bread by nearly 50%. You can turn a high-sugar, fast-burning food into a slow-burning, gut-healthy fiber. Today, we are going to explore the science of resistant starch. We are going to explain exactly how to perform this kitchen alchemy, and we are going to give you permission to bring the joy of toast back into your life safely. To understand why this trick works, we first have to understand what happens inside your body when you eat a piece of fresh, soft, fluffy white bread. When bread is baked, the starch granules in the flour are hydrated and heated. They swell up and burst open. This process is called gelatinization. It is what makes fresh bread soft and chewy. But it also makes the starch incredibly easy for your body to digest. Think of the starch molecules like a long chain of pearls. When the bread is fresh, the string holding the pearls together is weak. When you eat it, an enzyme in your saliva and stomach called amylase comes along like a pair of scissors. It snips that string instantly. The pearls fall apart, and each pearl is a molecule of glucose, sugar. Because the string is so easy to cut, this happens fast. The sugar floods your bloodstream all at once. Your blood glucose spikes. Your pancreas panics and pumps out insulin to shove that sugar into your cells. If you have insulin resistance, which many of us over 60 do, that sugar stays in the blood, causing damage. This is the mechanism of the carb coma and the diabetes danger zone. However, starch is not a static thing. It is alive, in a chemical sense. It reacts to temperature. This brings us to the magic of the freezer. When you take that same loaf of bread and put it in the freezing cold environment of your freezer, the water inside the bread changes. It moves out of the starch granules. The starch molecules, which were loose and fluffy, are forced to huddle together. They begin to recrystallize. They form a tight, rigid structure to protect themselves from the cold. This process is called retrogradation. It sounds like a complex word, but think of it like this: the starch is putting on armor. It is hardening. When you take the bread out of the freezer, that new, hard structure remains. Even when you thaw it, the starch molecules do not go back to their original, fluffy, easy-to-digest state. They stay locked in that retrograde structure. This transforms the starch from rapidly digestible starch into resistant starch. The word resistant is key. It means it resists digestion. It resists those enzyme scissors. When you eat this bread now, your body tries to cut the string of pearls, but the string is now made of steel. The enzymes cannot break it down easily. This means that a significant portion of the bread passes through your stomach and your small intestine without being turned into sugar. It does not flood your bloodstream. It does not cause that massive spike. Instead, it travels all the way down to your colon, where it acts like fiber. It feeds the good bacteria in your gut. So, you are eating the bread, you are tasting the bread, you are feeling full from the bread, but your blood sugar acts as if you ate a bowl of lentils or a vegetable. You have fundamentally changed the nature of the food. But the science gets even better. Researchers found that there is a double whammy effect. If you freeze the bread, then thaw it, then toast it, the amount of resistant starch increases even more. The heat of the toaster, applied to the retrograde starch, dries it out and further crystallizes the structure. A study published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition looked at this exact phenomenon. They took a group of people and fed them homemade bread. They tested their blood sugar after eating fresh bread, frozen thawed bread, and toasted bread. The results were staggering. The bread that had been frozen and then toasted caused a blood sugar response that was roughly half, yes, 50% lower, than the fresh bread. That is the difference between a dangerous spike and a gentle, manageable hill. Let's talk about how to do this practically in your routine. It is very simple, but the details matter. You go to the store and buy your bread. It can be sourdough, it can be whole wheat, it can even be white bread, although whole grain is always better for nutrients. When you get home, do not leave it on the counter. First, make sure it is sliced. You do not want to try to slice a frozen loaf of bread, that is a recipe for a kitchen accident, and we want to keep your fingers safe. If it is a bakery loaf, slice it all up. Put the slices in a freezer-safe bag, squeeze the air out, and put it in the coldest part of your freezer. It needs to stay there for at least 12 to 24 hours to ensure the retrogradation process is complete. The starch needs time to reorganize. Now, when you want breakfast, you take out a slice or two. Do not let it thaw on the counter. Put it directly from the freezer into the toaster. Toast it to your liking, golden brown is perfect. Then, add your toppings and eat. By following this sequence, freeze, toast, eat, you have effectively biohacked your breakfast. Why is this so important for the 60-plus demographic specifically? Because our metabolism is not what it used to be. When we were 20, we could eat a sandwich and burn it off by walking to the car. As we age, our muscles become less sensitive to insulin. We simply cannot handle the load of fast carbohydrates the way we used to. This is why type 2 diabetes often develops later in life. We feel like we haven't changed our diet, but our body's ability to process that diet has changed. This freezer trick allows us to align our diet with our aging metabolism without having to give up the foods that give us pleasure. There is another massive benefit to this resistant starch that we need to discuss: gut health. We talk a lot about probiotics, yogurt, sauerkraut, supplements. But probiotics are just the seeds. You need fertilizer for those seeds to grow. That fertilizer is called a prebiotic. Resistant starch is one of the most powerful prebiotics in nature. Because it survives the journey through the stomach, it arrives in the large intestine intact. There, the bacteria ferment it. When they eat this starch, they produce something called short-chain fatty acids, specifically one called butyrate. Butyrate is a miracle molecule for seniors. It reduces inflammation in the gut. It strengthens the lining of the colon, which prevents leaky gut. It has been linked to a lower risk of colon cancer. And, fascinatingly, butyrate communicates with your brain and your metabolism. It tells your body to burn fat. It improves insulin sensitivity. So, by freezing your bread, you are not just lowering your blood sugar, you are actively feeding the ecosystem in your gut that protects your immune system and your colon. You are turning a guilty pleasure into a health food. I want to address the psychological aspect of this. Dieting is hard. Restriction is hard. When you tell a human being, you can never eat this again, you create a craving. You create a sense of loss. Food is emotional. Toast is comfort. By using this method, you remove the psychological burden of restriction. You can sit down with your spouse and have toast and eggs. You don't have to be the martyr at the table. This reduces stress. And we know that stress raises cortisol, and cortisol raises blood sugar. So, by being happier and less stressed about your food, you are actually helping your diabetes management in a secondary way. Now, does this mean you can eat the whole loaf? No. I need to be the voice of realism here. The freezer trick lowers the glycemic index, but it does not remove the calories. A slice of bread is still 80 to 100 calories, frozen or not. If you eat 10 slices, you will gain weight, and weight gain is the primary driver of diabetes. This trick is a tool for moderation, not a license for gluttony. It allows you to have 1 or 2 slices safely. It does not erase the carbohydrates entirely, it just changes how they hit your blood. You still need to count your carbs if you are on a strict plan, but you can rest assured that those carbs will be absorbed slower and gentler. Let's talk about what you put on the toast, because this is where you can supercharge the effect. We want to slow down the absorption of sugar as much as possible. We have already done step 1 by freezing and toasting. Step 2 is adding healthy fat and protein. Never eat the bread naked. If you put jam or jelly on your toast, you are undoing all the good work. Jam is pure sugar. It is fast energy. Instead, put butter. Yes, real butter. The fat in butter slows down stomach emptying. It creates a buffer. Even better, use avocado. Avocado has healthy fats and fiber. Or use almond butter. The best combination for a diabetic breakfast is the frozen toast method, paired with an egg. The protein in the egg and the resistant starch in the bread work together to keep you full for 4 or 5 hours. The blood sugar curve becomes a flat line rather than a mountain peak. This prevents that mid-morning crash where you feel shaky and hungry again. That crash is what leads to snacking, and snacking leads to high blood sugar. You want stability. This breakfast gives you stability. I also want to touch on the stale factor. Some people worry that freezing bread dries it out or makes it taste like freezer burn. This is why the bag matters. You must use a heavy-duty freezer bag and squeeze the air out. But the beauty of toasting is that it revives the bread. When you toast frozen bread, the steam inside regelatinizes just enough to make the inside fluffy while the outside gets crunchy. Most people cannot tell the difference between fresh toasted and frozen toasted in a blind taste test. In fact, many people prefer the texture of frozen toast because it has a better crunch. This concept of resistant starch applies to more than just bread. It works for potatoes and pasta too. This is the leftover magic. If you boil potatoes, let them cool down completely in the fridge, and then make potato salad, those potatoes have developed resistant starch. If you cook pasta, cool it down, and reheat it the next day, it is healthier for a diabetic than fresh pasta. It is the same principle of retrogradation. The cooling period is the magic spell. So, for the 60-plus cook, getting into the habit of cook once, cool, and eat later is a very smart metabolic strategy. Meal prepping is not just for time management, it is for blood sugar management. Let's talk about the skepticism. You might be thinking, this sounds too good to be true. Why hasn't my doctor told me this? The answer is that nutrition science is slow to trickle down to clinical practice. Doctors are trained to prescribe medication and general guidelines like lose weight and exercise. They rarely get into the molecular chemistry of food preparation during a 15-minute appointment. But the research is solid. It has been replicated in the UK, in Australia, and in the US. It is a fact of food chemistry. However, individual results vary. This is important. Every person's microbiome is different. Every person's level of insulin resistance is different. I encourage you to be your own scientist. If you have a glucose monitor, the finger prick kind or the continuous monitor on your arm, test it. Do a controlled experiment. One morning, eat a slice of fresh bread. Measure your sugar 1 hour and 2 hours later. Write it down. The next day, do the freezer trick. Freeze, toast, eat. Measure your sugar again. Compare the numbers. Seeing the data from your own body is the most powerful proof you can have. Most people are shocked to see a 20 or 30-point difference in their spike. What about the type of bread? Does it have to be white bread? No. In fact, this works even better with high-quality sourdough. Sourdough bread is already lower on the glycemic index because the fermentation process eats up some of the sugar. If you take a sourdough bread, which is already good, and apply the freezer trick, you are getting the gold standard of diabetic-friendly bread. It becomes a nutritional powerhouse. Avoid the highly processed, squishy white sandwich breads if you can, simply because they are devoid of nutrients. Aim for a denser, heartier loaf. The resistant starch trick will work on all of them, but you might as well start with a better base. Let's discuss the additives. Be careful when buying low-carb or keto breads. These are often packed with weird fibers and wheat gluten to mimic the texture of bread. They can be hard on the digestion for older adults. The beauty of the freezer trick is that it allows you to eat real bread, flour, water, yeast, salt, without the additives. You are changing the physics of a natural food rather than eating a chemical imitation. There is a myth that toasting burns off the calories. This is false. Toasting does not burn off calories. It reduces the water content, so the slice is lighter, but the energy density is the same. Do not fall for that trap. The benefit is purely metabolic, not caloric. I want to paint a picture of your new routine. Imagine you are at the grocery store. You walk past the bakery section. Usually, you look away. Today, you pick up that loaf of rustic whole wheat or sourdough. You feel good about it. You go home. You take 10 minutes to slice it and bag it. You put it in the freezer next to the frozen peas. You feel a sense of control. You are not a victim of your diabetes. You are managing it with intelligence. The next morning, you pop a slice in the toaster. You smell that incredible aroma. You butter it. You sit down with your coffee. You take a bite. It is crunchy, warm, and satisfying. And you know, deep down, that you aren't hurting your body. You are feeding your gut bacteria. You are keeping your insulin steady. You are enjoying life. This is what sustainable health looks like. It isn't about suffering. It is about knowledge. It is about understanding how your body works and how food works, and finding the sweet spot where they meet. I also want to mention a warning for those with severe gastroparesis, slow stomach emptying, which is a complication of long-term diabetes. Because resistant starch takes longer to digest and is high in fiber, if you have severe digestion issues, go slow. Too much fiber too fast can cause bloating. Start with half a slice. See how your stomach feels. Drink plenty of water. Resistant starch needs water to move through the system properly. Let's summarize the steps one more time to make sure you have it locked in. Buy, choose a quality bread, preferably whole grain or sourdough. Slice, cut it into individual portions before freezing. Freeze, store it in the freezer for at least 12 hours. Overnight is best. Toast, take it straight from the freezer to the toaster. Do not thaw on the counter. Pair, eat it with a healthy fat, butter, avocado, or protein, egg, cheese. Enjoy, eat slowly and savor it. It is a small change. It costs you nothing. It adds maybe 30 seconds to your morning routine. But the cumulative effect on your health over a year, 5 years, or 10 years is massive. Every time you prevent a blood sugar spike, you are protecting your nerves, your eyes, and your heart. You are investing in your longevity. We often think that to get healthy, we have to do big, dramatic things. We have to run marathons or eat only kale. But the truth is, health is built in the margins. It is built in the small decisions we make 3 times a day. The decision to freeze your bread is one of those small, powerful levers you can pull. So, spread the word. Tell your friends at the senior center. Tell your family. This isn't a diet fad. This is physics. This is chemistry. This is a way to reclaim a piece of your heritage and your happiness. Bread has been the staff of life for thousands of years. It is sad that modern processing and sedentary lifestyles have made it a villain. But with the freezer trick, we can make a truce. We can bring bread back to the table, on our terms. Thank you for listening. I hope this information empowers you to look at your kitchen not as a place of temptation, but as a laboratory for your health. Go enjoy your toast. You've earned it.